Hello and welcome to the Thursday Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove and I'm joined by my co-host and co-coach. It's Mr. Taylor Rockwell.
Hey buddy, how you doing?
I am good. So, a shorter show today, Taylor, because we put out 3 monsters recently, right?
We really have.
3 50-minute plus shows, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Today we are answering just one question because it's such a good question.
Yes.
Right? We got a question on Twitter from Omid Hadari. Omid says, any chance you can do a segment on the show about tips for listeners who play in recreational leagues? The answer is yes.
The answer is yes.
And Omid goes on to say, there are a lot of beginners on our team, so best drills and how to introduce playing the game to newcomers would be great. Mm-hmm. So, Taylor, we're in a pretty good position to talk about this, right?
I think so, yeah.
We just counted it up, and between us, we have 51 years experience playing soccer. Mm-hmm. We have just finished, we are in the middle of sort of a pre-season summer coaching a team made up of some guys who have literally never played before, some guys who've played a little bit before, really mixture of talent, and we're preparing to play in the local, the CVSA, the local Richmond Rec League.
This is true.
So
this is all very true.
We can talk about all these sort of drills, especially that Taylor had set up for us, and the basics and how you learn them. But also we can talk about running a rec team, because we've also played on sort of higher division rec teams and seen the best way to organise and how to do that.
Right. And I think it's very cool that it does seem to be a recurring trend of the more people get interested in soccer, the more people want to play it, regardless of their age or level of ability or experience. The thing I would say to that,
this is all Landon Donovan's fault.
It is.
It's the 2010 World Cup. I feel like there are a lot of guys who, at some point around then, even though they're in their mid-20s, they're like, hey, soccer.
I thought you meant because of the Wells Fargo commercial, where on any given Sunday you might have Landon Donovan show up for your rec team.
Or they were like,
Don Ovan.
Hat-trick Rick doesn't look that good. I'm sure I could get that good.
Exactly. So I think it's a great trend, but I also think soccer is a sport that maybe doesn't necessarily lend itself to being fully recreational, given that, number one, you have to run a lot. As Matt Damon said in Dogma, mass genocide is the most exhausting activity one can undertake next to soccer. So it is very demanding, and I think you do have to kind of develop some skills. So it's worth pursuing, but you have to kind of take it seriously and not just be like, I'll just show up on Sunday and I'll play on the left side.
Right.
And we'll see what happens.
Yep, you'll probably lose is what's going to happen.
Yep, exactly.
All right, so gleaned from our time coaching, I should say, I don't know if this is full disclosure or just for information, Taylor and I are currently co-coaching the Richmond street soccer team. That's why we've got a team of some players who've never played before. More information about street soccer, you can go to streetsoccerusa.org.
There you go.
All right, so we can do, I want to call it 10 tips on how to run a rec team. I haven't actually counted how many tips we've got, but let's call it 10 tips because that's what people seem to like.
Might be 10, might be 13, who knows? And they range in terms of tactics to wear some stuff that matches. In fact, let's start with that one. Okay. If you're going to be on a team, if you're going to play in an actual league, have a uniform. It's a good idea.
Wear a team uniform. Yeah, some leagues, actually the local league that we play in, the CVSA, you have to have a uniform for your entire team, right? I know some other leagues in the country, you can basically have to wear the same colour. So you can wear similar-ish coloured T-shirts and play in a league. Technically, you're okay there. I think it's a terrible idea. I find it hard to say exactly why, though.
Well, number one, I think it's kind of like a guarantee that people will show up almost, because if it's just I'm in a team and I paid $10 or whatever and I'll show up and if I feel like it. But I feel like that jersey, knowing that you have to pack a jersey and be responsible for that jersey and know where it is, it kind of makes you think about it a little bit more. But it also, I will definitely say it's much more of a unifying factor, that it makes you feel more prepared when you show up. And I'll go so far as to say I come from a team, and I know this is a bit outdated, where it was shirt is tucked in, everything's matching, you have to wear predominantly black shoes. I think that's a rule that maybe is a bit much. But so that's my background. And so to see a team that's got same color, same shorts, same socks, I'm like, all right, this team's ready to go. They know what they're doing.
But I think at the very least, right, say if you're a new team, and it sounds like Omid's team may be new, at the very least invest in a set of jerseys and have actual team jerseys so they're all the same material, same, they're identical. I mean, different sizes, obviously, different numbers, but identical jerseys. It makes you feel more professional. It is also, then if you come up against a team who are wearing similarly coloured T-shirts, you look like the better team. You've got a psychological advantage in the before kickoff, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
This is true. You also probably won't have to wear pennies, which is the important one. If you got the team that's playing in mixed colors, and then you've got like your all orange jerseys, then they're probably going to be the ones who have to wear the pennies that have probably been worn a couple times and haven't been washed, and that's an odor advantage.
If you've got some extra cash, maybe invest in a set of second jerseys as well, right?
Yeah.
An away jersey, so you never have to wear the pennies.
Yeah, so that's one. Have a uniform. What else you got, Mr. Grove?
Let's go with the number of players.
Right.
Have enough players.
Oh, I would change that to have more than enough players.
Well, I was about to say, you think you have enough players, and if you're even questioning it a little bit, you don't have enough players, right? You need 11 players to start, right?
Yeah.
You need maybe, it depends on different leagues, have different rules. You need probably 4 or 5 subs, and then imagine that someone is always going to be out of 10. So if you think you have enough players, double check.
That's what I'll say. I will add the caveat that if you are starting a team, you don't have enough players. It's like always the thing that happens in any league that we play in. Yep. It's a team. Oh, we've all been playing together for a while. We've got some new guys coming in from college, so we only need 15. Yep. No, you don't. You don't.
I can hear people now. So someone's listening now saying, "Yeah, but we've got 15 really committed guys." What do you say to those people, Taylor?
And I say weddings happen. I say family vacations happen. I say injuries happen. I say usual events happen. I say
dropouts happen.
Football games that you want to watch, both American and European, happen, and you will start to see, especially as the season progresses. We make jokes about it, right? That first game, you get 30 people show up and everybody gets 8 minutes and everyone's frustrated. Yeah. And then by the last game of the season, you have 8 show up and you're like, hey, we have enough to play this time. Like, it happens with regularity. So I think the more players you can get, it might seem like overkill at first, but it will not be in the long run.
What's the optimum number?
I think
30 is too many.
I think probably 20 is my guess.
I'd go that too, or at least high teens.
Yeah, because I think it's very rare after that first game you're going to get everyone there. You're always going to have an injury. You're going to have somebody who called in sick and somebody who's out of town. And those numbers, you'll be surprised.
Somebody who just doesn't show up without even telling you they're not going to show up.
Yeah, and with that, actually, and maybe this bleeds into some other points, but I would say like you need to have somebody who kind of takes on the mantle of like being accountable for those players. So, hey guys, we've got a game this Sunday at 9:00. Who's going to be there? Because what tends to happen is one person says, oh, I can't make it. Another person says, and maybe somebody texts and somebody mentions it the game before. And if you don't have somebody tracking that, those numbers don't seem like a lot until all of a sudden, and you and I have both done this. We're like, oh, we're fine on numbers. And then we add it up and we're like, we have 11 players today. Like, it's really easy to lose track and not have enough people. So having one person who kind of shepherds the team, it's important.
And even just the idea of having that person to communicate so everybody knows when the game is, what time the game is, where the game is, that kind of thing. If you just have one person send an email to the entire team, one person send a text to the entire team, I would say send it a few days before and maybe a couple of days before as a reminder. Yep. Maybe even the morning of, to make sure that everyone knows the game is happening, and then no one has any excuse to say, oh, I didn't know. No one told me, right?
Yeah, and it's also important, and I'll give credit to the CVSA, which is the league we play in here in Richmond, which is a very big, very well-established league.
It's really well run, isn't it?
That they have like the system where you sign up for it and you get the text alerts if the games are canceled, but you'll definitely have leagues that don't have that. So then it helps to have one person whose responsibility is, hey, call the league, because it rained last night, let's make sure we have a game today so everybody knows, and we don't have people driving 30 minutes to the field for it to be rained out.
Okay, speaking of having that organizer type person, I'd say it doesn't have to be the same person, but when you're at the game, you need one person to be the decider, right? Yeah. One person who is making decisions on picking the team, on subs, on who's going in where, that kind of thing. And it does. In some ways, it doesn't matter if that person isn't Jose Mourinho, right? It doesn't matter if they make bad tactical decisions necessarily or non-genius tactical decisions. You just need to be organised. Yeah. You just need someone to say, okay, you go in at left. Otherwise, you have two people both thinking they're playing left wing, and then the other team comes down your other wing and scores because you're like, oh,
yeah,
we're all on this side of the field. And I've seen that actually happen.
Yeah, and I'll say this without naming names, but it will be very obvious very quickly, for you at least, that there's a club, I would say, that plays in CVSA that has, like, it has been established in the last like 5 or 6 years, already has won a lot of silverware, got a lot of players, and it's a team that like I think kind of got made fun of because their manager was very like, we're going out, we're organized, we're like ready to go, and treated it very professionally.
Yeah.
And it's an amateur league, and people were like, and then they won everything because they're really well organized, because you have that one person who's saying like, we sub at this point, you're going in here. No, you can't be a forward. I know you like shooting, but you've got to play here. Like you need that person who can take that mantle and say, this is how it needs to be, because you need that organization. That's why you don't have 11 coaches on the touchline in professional leagues.
All bickering about who's going to play centre forward. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, okay, so the club you're talking about, and they are a very well-run team, but they're competing at the highest level of rec soccer.
I love you, Rochi, by the way.
But they are, right? They're competing at the top level. Yeah. They're competing against recent college players, right? A team like Omid, I imagine, is not going to start in the Premier Division. What is the correct level of professionalism is not the word, but like competitiveness? Like how a team like Omid that we're picturing, how sort of disciplinarian do they need to be, for example? Okay. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think this is answering you. I apologize if it doesn't, but I'll say that like the only thing that can be the downside to what I just talked about is when it's a person who's taken that job who doesn't quite know what they're doing. And we've seen that too, where it's a guy like yelling like, we need all 4 forwards forward. And it's like, wait, what? You're playing 4 forwards? That doesn't make sense. So I think it needs to be somebody who at least has that background to know what they're doing. Yeah. And I think they have to maybe be confident enough to be able to handle saying like, no, like you can't do this. We need this guy on the field. So I think they need to be okay with being like slightly authoritarian in the game, but that doesn't mean that you're like, we got to do like track numbers and know where this guy, like you can be a little bit more laid back, I think, but you just need somebody who is kind of managing things and making sure everyone's operating on the same page.
Okay, we've talked a lot about what happens on match day. Yeah. We've probably got some more to say about that. Let's talk about the original question Omid asked, which was about practice and drills, especially for players who haven't played much before. Yeah. So you came in with me and started coaching the street soccer team this summer, and you started coaching some guys who hadn't played before, and we really have, you and me, but I'll give you more credit, got people to be better at soccer, which is like a small miracle when you watch it happen. It's really amazing.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
So explain the basics of how you do that and what's the best way to go about it.
So there's lots of different drills. You can find good drills online. If you want to get a certification, that's always a good. If you want to get a license for coaching, that's always a very good idea.
You can get your F license online. You can show up somewhere to do your E license over the weekend.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I think if you don't want to do that, then research. But I would say one of the biggest things I could say is eat your vegetables, which is if you've played soccer before.
Not literally.
No. But if you played soccer before, all the drills that you hated doing as a kid, because I'll speak from experience. I remember being 11, 12, however old, and you show up and it's like, okay, we've warmed up. Can we scrimmage now? Can we scrimmage another team? Can we shoot on goal? Yeah. Can we scrimmage against ourselves with the goals? Like, that's what every kid wants to do. That inclination doesn't go away as you become an adult.
So you're saying just meeting up and kicking around and having a scrimmage and a pickup game is not practice?
No.
You're not saying it has no value, surely, right?
No, but it is the thing where it's like, if you have people coming together, it's what I think it was Phil Jackson talked about with Shaq, where it's like his technique is flawed when it comes to free throws.
Oh, really? So I haven't heard that.
So he can take 10,000 free throws. He's still taking them using a flawed technique.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to get better.
So he's practicing a flawed technique.
Right, exactly. So if you have a bunch of people come out and it's just like, okay, well, there's a goal, kick it around, let's see what we can do. Like, that's great. You got people running around. But if you don't really have a plan and you're not saying like, well, that guy doesn't know how to pass and that girl can only use the outside of her foot, then you're not fixing that. And so I think there's a reason why, if you're a coach, you do the warm-up, then you have a first drill, second drill, third drill that kind of lead into that final game.
Okay, so let's get specific, though, to answer Omid's question. What are the basic drills to start with?
Sure. I think the easiest one, the one that we usually do at every practice, I call them Brazilians. I know there's lots of other things you can call them, and it's basically, if you've got 12 players, you get everybody gets a partner, so now you've got 6 partners. They're all facing each other, so you've got one line of 6 facing another line of 6. One of those lines has a ball, and you say, guy with the ball, girl with the ball, you throw it to your teammate's right foot, they instep the ball back to your hands. Do that, and then you switch. The next one, instep with the left foot, then laces. Then you can build up to like throw it to their chest. They settle with their chest, they pass it back to you. You head it back. Like, you start working on just those basic techniques over and over and over again. You start to develop those skills over and over and over.
And I can attest to this because I've been there and I've seen it happen. I've seen guys improve in the session. Like, first of all, because sometimes, say, Taylor will step in and say, hey, look, be on your toes, like, or, you know, take a step back, or make sure your ankle's locked, or that, all that kind of stuff, right? Like technical tips, but then also just the repetition. You see the combination of you helping and people figuring it out for themselves. You see that advance within the session. Then if you expand that over the course of like 2 months, the difference between the first time that person did it and the like 8th week that they do it is incredible.
Yeah. And with that, I'll say, well, first of all, thank you. But I'll also say, and the biggest thing with that is because...
I'm not just crediting you. I'm saying this is what happens when people repeat the same drill multiple times. You do get better at it, even if it doesn't sound like it would work.
Well, I think a big reason why it works is what you were talking about, is that you learn why you're doing it. And a lot of times in small-sided, like, you might pull off this amazing pass and everyone says like, oh, great job, but you might not know why it was amazing. You might not be able to replicate that.
Yeah.
But as you talked about, like, if you start learning like, oh, you pass with the instep and you keep your ankle locked, so then you can control the direction of the ball and you're up on your toes so you can meet it the way you want to meet it and not have to react. Like, you start learning why you're doing things, and it then translates onto the field as to like, oh, I'm doing this because of this. And it helps you know what you're doing.
I know this is very obvious, but when you play, even if you're playing like a scrimmage, and especially when you play an actual game, people tend to rely on habits, right? Because the pressure's on, you just fall into the natural habit of the thing you do, right? And if you have a fluid technique, you're going to keep doing that thing.
Or if you think you can pull off a move and you can't, and you try it a bunch of times and it doesn't work, I might have done that once or twice, or 4 times.
We'll maybe talk about that tomorrow on the Fucci sponsored show. But you can, when you do a practice and a drill, the game day pressure is removed, and you can work on the basics, and then you establish a new habit, and then you go into the game and the pressure's on, and then you have a good habit.
Right. And so you start with those techniques that kind of build your ability. And then I think you can do other little games here and there. I mean, you could do the important stuff about like passing and moving. You can do passing and moving drills, checking away and check two.
I'd never done the weave until you introduced it a few weeks back.
The weave is good. There's lots of other ones that require a lot more running that we haven't done. Checking away and checking two, which is like a basic thing that you're supposed to do on corners or throw-ins.
Can you explain that pretty quickly?
Yes. I mean, the idea is essentially if you're taking the throw-in, Daryl Grove, if I'm just standing there screaming for the ball, I'm just standing there. A defender can easily mark me. But if I run away 5 yards and then turn and run back at you, now I've almost certainly created separation between my defender and me, and that gives me time to settle the ball and turn or play it back to you with less pressure. So you kind of just little things like that where you have to work on your overall technique and approach to play better soccer. And then that graduates to really quickly that like then you can do those small-sided pickup games, and those are really good for getting a lot of touches. But I think you have to add little wrinkles here and there, because what tends to happen is players get tired, and so it's like, I'll just kick it long, or I'll kick it long, or I'll kick it long. That seems to be what happens with regularity.
And then one way to mix that up would be to have your small-sided game be below head height or below waist height, so the ball has to stay low, so people have to pass out of pressure. One way would be to introduce maybe 3-touch, so you can only have 3 touches. If you've got a team of people who love dribbling, because that is a thing, right? Some guys just love to dribble. You can make them pass with a 3-touch game.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of... You can set up zones where you have to pass into the zone before the team can enter it, so that it teaches you about passing and moving and about not just dribbling. Lots of different stuff you can do to help you kind of get the ideas of how to play down.
One other big thing I just realised, for a team that is just coming together for the first time, I think people underestimate the importance of communication. I think people know it's important, right? I think in theory people know it's important, but people don't know how to do it.
You're right.
Yeah.
And I want to say to that end, and maybe this isn't what you were talking about, and I know it's like a super childish thing, but if you're a team that's like, hey, I have 5 friends who wanted to play, and this guy had 3 friends, do an icebreaker.
Learn some names.
Learn the names, where it's like you can stand in a circle, I pass the ball to you, and I say, Daryl, and I pass the ball, and then you have to pick somebody out. And you learn the names that way, because we've both played on teams where you don't know half the people, and you end up being like, yeah. And like you're just kind of yelling, and nobody really knows who to pass to and what's happening.
I almost say now this should be thing number 1. Yeah. Everybody learn everybody's name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's really obvious, but frequently not done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, the other thing I'd say is when you play a rec soccer game, when I say communication, that doesn't mean someone yelling, come on, or someone yelling, try harder.
Yeah.
It's
be the ball. I never fully understood that one.
It's about communicating useful information.
Yeah.
So, for example, man on is a really good and useful phrase. It means there is pressure coming. You need to be aware that someone is about to tackle you from, like, someone's coming from behind and you can't see them.
And I have to say, I have to pause to say, I've asked many female soccer players about this one, and they, I think by and large, tend to stick with man on or guy on.
We asked Laura about it years ago, and it's just a phrase that's become a common phrase.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, or, pressure.
Yeah.
Like, you could say that too. But yeah, generally speaking, man on and turn and time.
Yep.
Those are the three that you need to be able to say.
Yep, and just letting people know where, like, if you're calling for the ball, like, pass to me, that's not useful. Like, to your right is useful.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Or behind you, that is useful.
Now, it's also a distinct possibility that you're going to be playing on an amateur team that isn't going to have practices and probably isn't going to be a whole lot of, like, doing a lot of training sessions. And so the other thing you can do that, again, young Taylor thought was really stupid and was just, a thing that people did is juggling. Juggling isn't stupid. It's really actually very important, unless you're just using your thighs. If you're just going right thigh, left thigh, right thigh, left thigh, not that skillful. But if you're working on like right thigh to left foot to right foot to left thigh, and you're working on how to control the ball using different parts of your body, that will absolutely automatically impact the way you play the game.
More touches, right? And I know you said the thing earlier about like if Shaq takes 10,000 bad habit free throws. I think if you're juggling,
You seem really not confident in calling it a free throw.
I was making sure. Like you can you have a success rate for juggling, right? If the ball keeps hitting the floor, you're doing it wrong. And you'll just get more touches and get a better feel for the ball and be more comfortable with it the more you juggle.
Yeah. Right? I am inclined to say that about 50 is what you need. Like the people who can juggle 4,000, that's awesome. I don't have the patience for that. But like 50, I think demonstrates that you can control the ball for a prolonged period of time using different parts of your body.
Okay, can we get back to match day?
Sure.
I've got the biggest one for you, I think. No, actually, no, it's big. Get people there early.
Yeah.
The teams that have people showing up at kickoff, putting their socks on at the first whistle, or showing up 2 minutes before the game, are usually the teams that lose, right? And it doesn't matter how many years you've been playing or how good you are. The time you show up for a game is something you can absolutely control, right? It's not a talent, it's not a skill, it's just a thing that you can do, right?
Yeah, and I would compare it maybe too dramatically to like running a restaurant, right? And if you have restaurant opens at like 9, our staff needs to be here at 8. And then at like 7:55, 6 of the staff are there and only one of your cooks and your hostess isn't and your waiters aren't. And then it becomes like, okay, well now one more waiter's come. Okay, cool. So we haven't and you're having to plan everything based on we have 9 players. Yep. Okay, so this guy who's usually forward, now he's going to play right back. And this girl who's usually a left midfielder is going to be right mid today. Oh wait, no, the right midfielder's come. She's going to stay on the left. Like you're just having to figure out on the fly. You're not organized.
And then, but if everybody does get there early, right? First of all, you can do a thing where, say, the people who are here on time, those people start. Even if your best player shows up 5 minutes before, that person is benched to start the game, right? All right? But if you do show up, say, half an hour seems about, for rec soccer, 30 minutes before kickoff seems good, right? But 30 minutes dressed and ready to go.
Yeah.
More or less? I say 30 minutes and then 25 minutes dressed and ready to go.
Yeah, I think so.
Then you can warm up as a team, right? You can just run across the field a couple of times as a team, get the blood flowing. You can play some 5v2. We didn't talk about this really. The rondo. You've seen teams do this multiple times. 2 people in the middle, usually 5 people on the outside. The 5 on the outside play keep away. If one of the 2 in the middle gets the ball, they go on the outside. The person who lost the ball goes on the inside. That gets the ball moving and moving and moving.
It sure does.
What you don't want to do is have 7 people shooting at the goalkeeper.
No, you don't. And standing around.
No one's running, everyone's standing, everyone's watching.
Also, if we're talking about adults who maybe aren't like doing a ton of physical activity, this would be me, for example. I had like pretty bad hamstring problems last season, and I think it was you who pointed out, like, well, are you doing a lot of like sprinting elsewhere, or is this like the only time in the week that you sprint? And then it occurred to me that it's pretty much the only time in the week that I sprint, and even if I was showing up 30 minutes before the game, I wasn't really stretching and running and getting loose. So you're always going to hurt yourself. So that's another reason. If you're showing up 2 minutes before kickoff, maybe with a hangover, and then not stretching and like having mismatched stuff, you're obviously not prepared for the game.
So have a jog together before, have a stretch together. Not only do everyone gets ready for the game, you also look kind of a little more intimidating because you look more organised because you're doing a team activity. And I learned something from you about the running warm-up.
What's that?
Do it in a straight line, not a horizontal line.
Yeah.
Can you explain
two
why?
straight lines if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 straight lines where you have 2 people in front, everybody lines up behind them, you run to one side and you kind of peel out and then come back together. It keeps the team more together and it keeps it so that you can kind of have everybody doing the same thing. So knees up, heels up, face inside, face outside. you can kind of keep track of that, because if you're just running in a straight line, that straight line quickly becomes
like one horizontal
a scatter
line.
plot. Yeah, basically. Yeah. And you've got people all over the place, and people aren't really doing it. And if you're the one who's leading it, you can't really see what's happening behind you, whereas it's much easier to do so if you've got two lines that are organized.
You mentioned don't show up with a hangover, right? That is very good advice. Not everybody is capable of following that. So how about some tips to avoid
Present
it?
company included. And I'm referring to myself, not you.
Yeah, actually, honestly, as I've got older, I've made it an absolute rule not to do it, because I definitely perform worse with any type of hangover.
This is a bit off topic, but my brother-in-law once made the point that with hangovers, you always hear oh, you're 30 now, the hangover's going to be worse, and you're 40 now and your hangover gets worse. I think in his point was your tolerance for hangovers gets worse. So when I was 25, I could show up and maybe play a little bit better with a hangover, or maybe show up to work with a hangover. But as you get older, I think you're less inclined to want to do that. And so I think maybe when you're younger, you can maybe get away with it, but you're probably not going to play as well.
Even if you can get away with it, even if someone on Omid's team is 21, right? You're still going to perform worse than you would have. This is very true. Right? You still would have performed better without the hangover.
This is absolutely true.
So, if you have to have a night out the night before, right? So it's Saturday the night before, the game is on Sunday, you can go slow, right? Just always bear in mind, okay, I have a game in the morning, I'm going to go slow. I've got to get up early, I want to be hydrated.
And hydration is a thing.
Hydration is a thing. Hydration is key. Hydration, the night before, just drink a load of water even if you're out.
Yep.
Before you go to bed, maybe drink an extra big pint of water. And definitely, even if you weren't out the night before, when you wake up that morning of the game, get water in you. If you have a cup of coffee and go to the game, not hydrated.
This is true. This is very, very, very true.
So hydrate responsibly in every sense of the word.
Right. And if you do want to have an evening out as a team, for example, I'd say you've got a game on Sunday, which is usually when CVSA here plays. Say Friday night, you get everyone together and you're going to watch a U.S. game, or you're going to watch an MLS game that's on Friday evening. I'd say it's good to watch games together as a team, but I think it's important to watch games together and actually watch them. So you're not just sitting around and having a bunch of conversations and then the game's on in the background and oh, somebody scored.
Yeah, but then we watched a game together.
Kind of actively watching, especially if you've got people who are new to the game and don't understand what a central midfielder does or what's a double pivot. You can kind of watch the game and figure it out as you go along. And once you see kind of visual evidence of what's happening, you start to maybe internalize it a little bit more.
I would even go as far as saying, watch a game that you already know the result of.
That's definitely a fair point, yeah.
Put it on a DVR, you already know the result, so you know what's happened, and then you just have to ask yourself, why did this happen? Say one team didn't concede a goal, get your defenders, and you've just read in the paper maybe this team defended well, right? Watch that defending team, watch what their back four does, watch how they're doing it. You can pick up tips just from watching that team.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think once you pick up those tips, applying it to the field...
Yes, this is key, but don't go too far.
Well, I'm not sure. Which thing are you talking about?
I'm talking about having tactics for your team.
Oh, yeah. So I think having an approach, and so the basic one is 4-4-2, 4 defenders, 4 midfielders, 2 attackers, right? Yeah. And it's kind of the standard approach, but that doesn't mean everyone's going to know what they're doing. And so you can't just say, go play left mid to somebody who doesn't know what a left mid does. You've got to make sure everyone is aware of their responsibilities and what they're supposed to be doing.
And I think part of this is have a formation, have a tactical plan, as in a style that you want to play, make it really simple.
Yeah.
If it has multiple layers to it, and you're talking about if you've got guys who've never played before, or even guys who have, don't have a complicated pulley system for your fullbacks. Don't have double pivots, and there are certain situations where someone goes, don't have a false 9, don't do all of that, right? Have, I want to say, a 4-4-2, basically, right?
Yeah.
And then between the team, you can decide, okay, James up top is really fast and is good at holding the offside line. We're going to play balls over the top for James. At least everybody on the team knows that's the plan.
Yeah.
Or, Lucy, right winger, is incredibly skilled, puts in a great cross. Let's try and work the ball to her, and then you know she's going to cross it in, and then you know that the ball's coming into the box. So you've got a very, very basic plan.
Yeah.
But once you overcomplicate it, you're just going to lose people, and you're going to make it harder to execute, and you're going to be real disappointed when the plan you've got that looks like a spider web diagram with dotted lines all over it. When none of that comes off, you're going to be real disappointed.
Yeah, because there's a reason why coaches get paid the amount of money they do.
Yeah, and
it's because they are working every single day, training every single day, working on this, working on that, and you can't just say, okay, we're going to do a 4-2-3-1. You go play up top and run around. You've got to know, okay, this guy's going to come here and do this. You've got to know your responsibilities. You can't just kind of show up there. So that's why I think keeping it very simple, not having a false 9 when the person is like, "What's a forward?" Like it's going to be a problem.
If that person like gets their 9 jersey and just like scratches out some of the number
exactly.
on the back, have I done it right?
First of all, that's awesome, and I wish that's actually what that meant. I think one of my final ones though is I do want to say though, with that tactical approach, Chuck Klosterman always criticized soccer because he was like, "Oh, you can have 5 really good kids and 6 bad kids and you'll be fine. Or you can have 1 terrible kid and just hide him outside and like no one's going to care. Like it doesn't matter." That's not true. It really is not true. It's one of the biggest falsities of soccer. If you have a weakness, if you have just like a black hole on one side where like they can't pass, they can't
all your
defend.
attacks go to die.
Yeah, exactly. And where their attacks go to thrive, you're going to be in trouble. And so I think that's not the case. You can't just hide players who aren't very good. I think what you have to do is build to their strengths. So, for example, you talked about theoretical player who's very fast up top. I forget the name you went with.
James.
There we go. If James is super fast, put him up top and have him put pressure on the defenders and run around a lot. If he has a bad first touch, that's fine because he's running around and hassling people. Mm-hmm. You can use his pace. But don't just be like, well, he's fast, but he's not very good, so let's just stick him over here and let him run around. Like, give him a job to do. Yep. Give her a job to do. If she has very good technique but isn't very good defending, then make her play forward. Like, it's about finding places to play people who are perceived weak links, because those weak links can become the best players on the team.
And I'd especially say if you just got to find their strength, right? And this isn't like some weird motivational hang in there thing that we're saying. Like, this is a real thing. Like, everyone has some strength of soccer, and it's the team's job to figure out how to use that, not how to try and hide it. But one way that you can make things worse for yourself is if you've got, say, 2 of your weaker players and you put them both on one side. So you have a weak left back and a weak left winger, that side is going to get absolutely annihilated. Yep. So at least if you've got a weaker left mid, have a really strong left back, right? Maybe even have a guy who wants to be a central midfielder, have them play left back and let them overlap that left winger. Then that left winger is helping the left back get more involved in the game.
Exactly. Any other points, Mr. Grove?
Yeah, final one, and it relates to Wednesday's show. Be nice to referees.
Yes.
Be nice to referees and good things will come to you.
I have don't be that team.
Yes.
I mean, it's basically don't be the team that goes out there and screams at people, screams at the refs, screams at each other. Like, we've been on those teams, and it's embarrassing and frustrating, and it's never good. It's the same thing that you were talking about with, like, don't be the team that screams, like, let's go, let's beat. Like, you're just yelling, and it's just you end up getting into that zone where everyone's yelling and everyone's annoyed, and then you're not really focused on anything but yelling.
And I'll tell you this, if you're yelling at the ref and you're yelling at the opposition team, you are not focusing on what you're supposed to be doing, and you're going to miss something, and you're probably going to concede goals for it, or you're going to miss out on opportunities because of it, right? Focus on the game. Focus on kind of being nice to everybody. Yeah. I know this is like a very Pollyanna-type policy.
No, it's not,
but it's practical as well, right? Look, if you're focused to yell on the ref, you're not focused on tackling and passing.
I mean, there's a reason, and it's one of the things that I learned, maybe shouldn't have when I was really young. There's a reason why when professional player X roughly slide tackles in a professional player Y and doesn't want to get a card, why they get up and they're like, "Oh, are you okay? I'm really sorry. Can I help you?" The ref's going to maybe give a little bit of leeway because it's like, oh, he didn't mean to do that. She didn't mean to do that. Whereas if you just wreck a person and you've been screaming and yelling and cursing at the ref the whole game, you're going to get a card.
Get up and spit.
Yeah, exactly. If you get up and spit, you're getting a red. But yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's if you kind of build that rapport, I think it's much to your advantage.
All right. Anything else, Taylor? I feel like we've hit all the points that will be helpful to Omid and to other rec soccer players as they prepare for the fall season. I'm sort of just buying us time in case you have any extra.
Just orange slices, man.
Really?
Orange slices are important. No. But
they actually are. If you can have some nice touches like orange slices, or if someone can bring a big pitcher like one of those Gatorade. What are they not called pitchers, are they?
Cooler.
Big Gatorade cooler, even if it's just full of water, like all that kind of stuff. If you can have some nice things on the team, it's not a bad thing.
No, it's not.
All right, then. If you have any questions about everything we've just talked about, email them to contact@totalsoccershow.com. We can maybe do some follow-ups on the show as people prepare for their rec seasons. Omid, if you're listening, let us know if you have any specific questions because we want to help your team. Apart from that, best of luck this season.
Yes, sir.
Unless you're playing us.
Also,
Taylor
yes, sir.
Rockwell, thank you for talking to me today.
Daryl Grove, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again on Friday.